Hello student, we are studying our third module of renewable energy sources and which is the photothermal photovoltaic systems. In that we have covered the introductory part, also the working principle of the solar cell and the different parameters which are help us to describe the nature of solar cell, or it gives the performance of the solar cell. That is, we studied different parameters such as efficiency, fill factor, open circuit voltage, short circuit current, and also we study the IV characteristics of the solar cell. And after that we study the limitation to the photovoltaic efficiency. That means there are different factors which affect the efficiency of the solar cell, so we also taken into account in our previous videos. Now in this video we will start with the another application, that means basic photovoltaic system for power generation. That means the photovoltaic system is used for the power generation. Now how the system works, or different types of the system which are used for the power generation. So let's see. Photovoltaic arrays can be used to provide electricity for a wide variety of applications, many of which will make meaningful contribution to economic development. As per, we know that the photovoltaic system is used for different applications, and these applications, or this main use of photovoltaic system to produce the electricity. So this conserve the economy, or the meaningful contribution to the economy development of the photovoltaic system. That means it gives the electricity in low cost as compared to other sources, that is the fossil fuel and other sources from we get the energy, but this is now costly, but this electricity which can be obtained from the photovoltaic system can be easily obtained, and this also helps to reduce the cost, so the meaningful contribution to the development. There are two main types of systems. There are two main types for the power generation, that is the photovoltaic system for the power generation. First is the standalone system and second one is the grid connected system. So first is the standalone system, in which photovoltaic array is the principal source of energy. In a standalone system, only photovoltaic array is the main source of energy, and in grid connected system there is another one source, but in standalone system, stand alone, the name indicate that it has only one principal source of energy, and which is the photovoltaic array. The energy stored often in batteries for periods when there is insufficient solar radiation. Now when we don't need any energy at that particular instant, then we can store that energy in the batteries for a periods when there is a insufficient solar of energy. We can utilize that energy, so the for the storage of that energy we can use the batteries. There may also be backup power supply such as an engine generator set. There may be backup power supply during cloudy days, night time, so we can use another power supply, so that which is the engine generator set, and so we are able to generate the electricity or power. So this is the backup power supply. Second type is the grid connected system. In this type, the load is connected to both photovoltaic power system and an electricity grid. Electricity grid is the, or power grid. Electricity grid is also called as a power grid, which is the network of electricity, the long network of electricity which provide or deliver the electricity to user or consumer. So this is the power grid, and in grid connected system, in this type the load is connected to both photovoltaic array as well as the electricity grid. That means the load means the where we want to use that electricity. That means the load is connected to both. That is, both means photovoltaic power system, that is a photovoltaic array, and second one is the electricity grid. In periods when there is a sufficient solar radiation, the array powers the load, otherwise grid is used. If there is a sufficient solar radiation, that is there is a fully sunny days, then we have maximum solar intensity, and we can load the solar power array. That means the maximum amount of electricity can be generated with the help of solar array, and so we can use at that time the solar array. But when there is no sunlight, proper sunlight, or the intensity of sunlight, then we can use a grid. In some cases, when the output exceeds the load, the electricity is fed back into the grid. That means when the output exceeds the load of the electricity, that means we operate a load on a particular that electricity generated from the solar cell. If our need is less but the production of the electricity from the solar cell is more than, then this extra energy can be again fed back to the grid or fed back into the grid. So the excess energy fed back to the grid. So the grid is used to store that energy or electricity. This type include large megawatt sized system. That means for the storage or the capacity of that system is very large, and which is in the order of megawatt sized system. You know that watt is the power of the unit, and the capacity of that grid or this type of system is in the order of megawatt. That means 10 to the power 6. Mega means 10 to the power 6 watt sized capacity or size. The large grid systems are not yet appropriate for most developing countries, but work on this is of considerable importance because their construction contributes to reducing the cost of the photovoltaic modules. That means in many countries or developing country, in many developing country, the large grid system are not yet appropriate. That means they are still in development, they cannot be used in a large amount, but work on this of considerable importance, but they are still in development, so that in future they can be used for the production of the electricity. So their construction contributes to reducing the cost of photovoltaic modules. That means they are in the construction mode. So after the construction, when they exposed in a market, they will expose in a market, the cost of the photovoltaic modules gets reduced, so that in future we will use large amount of large grid systems. Now there are two types, that is a standalone system and grid connected system. For the standalone system, only solar array is used, so we are not going in detail, but in a grid connected system, grid is used also, and some other components are also used for the distribution of the electricity. So we are taken into account only grid connected system in detail. So let's see. A basic photovoltaic system integrated with the utility grid is shown in the figure. That means a photovoltaic system with the grid is shown in the following figure. That means this figure. This is a basic photovoltaic system for the generation, and in that there is a first component is the solar array, second is a blocking diode, and at the bottom there is a storage battery, and storage battery has a switch, because when we want battery then we can connect, and when we don't want the battery, we can remove easily. There is a power conditioning part, that is inverter or converter, which help us to convert the DC power into AC, and after that the local load. So this is a basic photovoltaic system for the power generation. It permits solely generated electric power to be delivered to the local load. That means the grid connected system permit the solely generated power. That means the power generated from the solar is delivered to the or to be delivered to the local load. That means the function of that grid connected system is the deliver the electricity which is generated from the solar cell to the local load. It consists of different components such as, that means the grid connected system consists of different components or which is made up of different components such as solar array, blocking diode, battery storage, inverter, and all other switches, breakage, all those things are required. So we will consider one by one. So let's see. First is the solar array. It is a large or small which converts the solar radiation energy into DC electrical power. That means the function of the solar array is that converts or which converts solar radiation into DC electrical power. That means the solar array only converts the solar light or sunlight into the electrical power, and which is the DC power. So the function of that solar array. The second component is a blocking diode. There is a one diode, and it is called as a blocking diode because it protects our grid or solar system or solar array. It protects the battery from the discharging. So it is known as the blocking diode. A blocking diode which lets the array generated power flow only towards the battery or grid. That is, lets it array generated power flow only towards the battery or grid. It means the blocking diode has a function, or it function as a only distributor. That means it only pass the array generated, that is the electricity which can be generated from the solar cell, and this electricity pass towards the battery or grid. This is the function of the blocking diode, and which is used for the purpose so that the battery will not be discharged when there is no sunlight. If there is a sunlight, then there is no problem. It can pass the electricity which can be generated from the solar cell to the battery or grid. But when there is no sunlight, then the electricity cannot be generated from the solar array, so that the battery will discharge through the solar array. So the function of the blocking diode to prevent the discharging of the battery. Without blocking diode, the battery will discharge back through the solar array during times no solar radiation. That means when there is no solar radiation, the blocking diode prevent the battery from discharging. Next component is the battery storage, in which the solar generated electric energy may be stored. Means battery storage. Generally, battery is used for the energy storage. When we have exceed power, then we can store it in the battery. This is the basic photovoltaic system for power generation. This is a generally circuit. First component is the solar array, which convert the solar light into electricity, and which is the DC. After that, there is a diode. Diode is the blocking diode, and this blocking diode only pass the electricity from solar array to the electricity grid or battery. So the function of the diode is only pass the electricity which can be generated from the solar cell to the battery or grid. But when there is sunlight, and when there is no sunlight, then blocking diode prevent the discharging of the battery through solar array. And third one is the battery storage. Battery storage is used to store the energy, and it has a switch. When we want to connect the battery, then we can on the switch, and when we don't want, then we can off the switch. And after that, there is an inverter or converter. Sometimes we require AC electrical signal. Then at that time, the inverter converts DC electricity into AC electricity. So the inverter or converter is used. And after that, there is a local load and from that utility feeder. That means we can distribute that electricity to the consumer. So this is the basic photovoltaic system for power generation. In this way we can obtain the electricity from the solar light and we can distribute it to the consumer. So this is the power generation from the solar system or photovoltaic system. This is one of the same. There is a first is the energy source, that means our sun, and after that there is a energy conversion. Energy conversion means there is a solar array and which convert the that light energy which coming from the sun into the electricity. After that there is a energy inversion or conditioning. That means energy inversion or means conditioning means there is an inverter or converter, and if we have large amount of energy than the requirement, then we can store it in the battery. So there is a energy storage, that is the batteries, and after that there is a energy distribution. That means if we have the proper amount of the electricity, we can distribute it to the consumer. It is used for the different purposes such as glowing, for glowing to the bulb and other electricity utility. That means we can give it to the electricity grid, and from that we can distribute this electricity to the consumer for the different applications. So one of the same. The simplest means of storage on a small or moderate scale is in the electric storage batteries, especially as the solar cells produce the direct electric current required for battery charging. That means the electricity which can be generated from the solar cell is generally DC electricity, and this DC electricity is used to charging for the is used to purpose the to charge the batteries. So the large or small batteries, because of the large variation in the solar irradiance both daily and seasonally, batteries are used for the energy storage. That means if we want the energy continuously or daily, then if there is a problem, that means there is no sunlight, like in a rainy season or in cloudy days or during night time. So at that time if we want electricity, then we have to store that electricity during sunny days or morning time. So for that purpose we require batteries. They also act as a buffer between the solar array and the load. That means buffer means it acts for two functions. So first is they act a buffer between solar array and load. That means the electricity can be generated from the solar array, which can be stored for the long duration or for the day, night time, or in a rainy season we can utilize that electricity from the battery. So the extra energy which can be generated from the solar cell can be stored within a battery. So and after that if we don't want the electricity, then again feed back to the grid. So this cycle will be continue, and the battery acts as between the solar array and the load. That means load, when we have extra energy, then we can store within the battery. That means the battery is used for the storage purpose, and if we want the energy during a night time or cloudy day or in a rainy season, then we can use that energy, or we can utilize that energy during that time with the help of battery again. So the load is connected to that battery, and so that we can utilize that energy. That means the battery acts as a buffer between solar array and load. The battery supplies energy to the load during periods of little or no solar irradiance and store energy from the array during periods of high irradiance. That means again same meaning, the battery supplies energy to the load during periods of little or no solar irradiance. That means if we want energy during a daytime, then the battery supplies energy continuously or when we want, and also it can be stored when the solar irradiance is large, then the amount of energy generated from the solar cell is also large, so we can store this energy within a battery. The two types of battery that have been used for photovoltaic system are lead acid and nickel cadmium batteries. That means generally there are different types of batteries, but these two batteries commonly used for the photovoltaic system, and which are lead acid and nickel cadmium batteries. These two batteries are generally used for in energy storage in a PV system or photovoltaic systems. Lead acid batteries are generally used because they are available in many capacity sizes and types, ranging from car batteries for starting, lightning, and ignition to cell float service batteries. That means generally lead acid battery have large capacity, that is in the order of megawatt or more than that, and it has a different types, so we can use it for large energy storage, and it is also used for different purposes, and it can cover the small size to large size, and also it has a different types, so it uses ranging from car batteries for starting, that means the lowest to highest, that is lightning and in ignition to cell float service battery. So lead acid battery generally used for the photovoltaic system. Now next component is the inverters. Inverters are the devices which change the array DC output to AC of suitable voltage, frequency and phase to lead photovoltaically generated power into the power grid or local load shown in the figure. That means the function of the inverter is simply to convert the DC electricity which can be obtained from the solar array or solar cell, and again convert it into AC form. So AC means DC is the DC has a constant frequency, but AC has a varying frequency with the time. So with the suitable voltage or frequency or phase, the AC can be generated with the help of inverter. These functional blocks are sometimes referred to as a power conditioning. That means the inverter or converter is also referred as a power conditioning. So we can call it as, because it is used for the power conditioning. It is clear that the system photovoltaic offers the option of DC power, AC power, or sometimes the possible alternative is used to the direct current from the solar cell to decompose water by electrolysis into hydrogen and oxygen gases from which electricity can be generated. That means sometimes the photovoltaic system offers the option of DC power, AC power, or sometimes alternative source. That means simply we can generate DC power or AC power. AC means which can be converted from DC to AC. The photovoltaic array generate the DC power, and after that there is a conversion of DC to AC with the help of inverter, but the alternative use is the direct current from the solar cells which decompose water. That means this direct current, that means directly we can take DC output from the solar array and we can use that DC output or DC current to decompose the water. That means the decomposition of the water is the electrolysis process. That means there is a separation of ions, and this water decompose into two, that is the hydrogen and oxygen, so that the hydrogen, this decomposition process again generate electricity. So this type of electricity can be generated, or this is the alternative way, that is DC, AC, as well as this type of electricity can be produced with the help of different techniques. So the power can be generated with the help of different techniques using the solar radiation. Next and last part is the, or component is the power conditioner. Not last but second last, power conditioner. Because the voltage output of the photovoltaic array varied with the solar intensity and temperature. System with battery storage require voltage or shunt regulator to prevent excessive overcharging of the battery. We know that during sunny days the intensity of the solar light is very high, so that we are able to obtain the maximum temperature. And due to that maximum temperature and high intensity, there is a possibility to damage the battery. So to prevent the damage of battery, we can use shunt regulator or voltage regulator, so that it can maintain the temperature of that system, and so that the limited amount of energy can be stored in the battery, so that the lifetime of the battery can be increased, so that we can increase the lifetime of that battery. So there is need of shunt regulator or voltage regulator. In our circuit there is no voltage regulator, but we can also use the voltage regulator or shunt regulator to avoid the excess overcharging of the battery. Further controls are used as required to prevent the discharge or to ensure that array is opening at its maximum point. That means other controls are also used, or other components are also used to prevent the discharge or ensure that array is operating at its maximum power point. It means the array gives the maximum power, that means it operates at the maximum power point. We can also use another component for that. So we have that facility also. So when we want, we can use. The following figure shows the system with a voltage or shunt regulator. That means this figure is with the voltage regulator or shunt regulator, and which protect our battery from overheating. So the diagram is the same again, that is there is a first element is the, or first component is the solar array. After that there is a blocking diode, and after that blocking diode there is a battery in our previous figure, and in between blocking diode and the battery there is a shunt regulator. That means the shunt regulator should be before the battery, so that it can protect the battery due to overheating in sunny days, or if we have the high intensity of the solar radiation. And again last component is the load. So the load means the instrument which we want to operate from that electricity. So this is the system with the voltage or shunt regulator. Now last and important component of the photovoltaic power generation system, so which is the appropriate switches and circuit breakers. And appropriate switches are required to permit the isolating parts of the system as the battery. That means in our circuit we can isolate the battery from the system, or we can connect the battery from the system. For that we require the switches. So when we want battery to store the energy, then we can use switch to connect that battery. And if we want to remove that battery, when we are only generate the power, and immediately when we generate the power, we are able to generate the power and we can utilize it immediately. So if we don't need any battery, then we can remove it with the help of switch. So the switches play very important role for that. One would also want to include breakers and fusing protection between the inverter output and the utility grid to protect both photovoltaic system and the grid. That means sometimes we require the circuit breakers in between inverter and utility grid. That means the from where the energy can be distributed, that is there is the energy electricity network, and inverter inverts the DC or convert the DC into AC. So in between them we require breakers, so that, or fusing protection, so that we can protect the solar array or photovoltaic system and a grid from the different parameters which damage the photovoltaic system and the grid. So this is the use of circuit breakers and fusing element or fusing component. So this is all about the photovoltaic system for the power generation, and in particular there are two types, that is the standalone system and second is the grid connected system. So we only studied the grid connected system in detail. So this is all about the power generation from the photovoltaic system. This is very important part because we are able to generate the maximum amount of electricity from the solar energy. So and this is the pollution free and free of cost, because we have sun energy without cost and which is easily available. We only want instrument to convert this sunlight into electricity. So this is very important application of the solar energy, that means the power generation from the photovoltaic system. So this is all about the power generation. Now in our next video we will see some advantages as well as disadvantages of the solar energy conversion. It means solar energy has lots of advantage as compared to disadvantages, so it is widely used, but there is still some disadvantages. So we will discuss that in our next video. So we will continue with that in our next video.